served shoulder to shoulder, training together, exercising together. So you're sending a powerful message that NATO, including the United States, will defend Estonia, will defend Latvia, will defend Lithuania, will defend all of our NATO allies. As NATO allies, we stand together. We stand as one.
So it is really important to work with other nations together, as close as you can, and even before an operation starts.
We represent U.S. commitment to the alliance. I mean, U.S. Army Europe, 30,000 soldiers forward stationed in Europe. And then the Army's contribution is above that because of the rotational force capability that comes over and other exercises that will attract other units.
What we've described the environment of the future is it's going to be a very complex environment. It's going to be a multinational environment. Changes very quickly. So when you take a look at United States Army Europe, it's almost custom made to do that. I mean, it's right here in the middle of a very complex part of the world. Every day they work with multiple partners. They're working in multiple domains.
We were in Cameroon, Africa in March. We were in Estonia when Operation Atlantic Resolve first kicked off. We were there for 2 months, and now we're here in Latvia, moving to Poland at the end of the month. So great opportunity to get some unique experiences.
That young troop commander is a senior U.S. Army officer who is planning an 1,836-kilometer road march back through 4 countries over a period of 2 weeks. I mean, what an incredible opportunity, is we're enabling this alliance.
We're representing not just 173rd or 191. We're an actual representation of the U.S. Army. And the guys understand that, and we're here and ready to go.
As part of the State Partnership Program, when the National Guard deploys forward to Eastern Europe, they bring capabilities that augment what we have in Europe, as well as continuing to develop relationships in our allies as they train together.
We need the capacity and the capability that the Army brings, and the United States Army Europe needs it as well. The Army National Guard has been engaged in Europe for many years. We're also finding ways to leverage our state partnership program across the eastern countries in Europe.
Next year will be our 20th anniversary working with Croatia Armed Forces, both in the United States and Minnesota. So we want to continue that relationship, as well as being able to provide forces in the future for Europe and continue to work with our state partner.
The active duty troops do what they do, and they do it extremely well. What a lot of our foreign partners, especially in the state partnership program, treasure the most is seeing the same leaders and the same faces every time. There's a relationship that really carries through to a trust.
The work being done by the Army National Guard, the Air Guard, and the Army Reserve is impressive, it's professional, and it's essential. The Guard and Reserve are essential to making our 30,000 look and feel like 300,000.
To meet new security challenges, we're adapting using a new playbook, an approach that is both strong and balanced. NATO allies are only growing more united.
The re-enlistment NCO is right in the back of the room. If after watching that, anybody wants to take a burst of 6, we'll sign you up. So General Grass, General Hargett, all of you, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this conference. I asked for it months ago as I began to really understand what we've got to accomplish in Europe. It became clear to me that there was no way we could make our 30,000 look and feel like 300,000 unless I had the Army National Guard, the Air Guard, Army Reserve, as well as allies and others doing more. And that's really what I want to talk to you about this morning for just a few minutes. Give you an update on the current situation, but also tell you what we're going to do about it. And like everybody in this room, you know, since I was a brand new cadet, or if you were a brand new private going through basic training, you're told, don't whine about it, just figure out how to do the mission, because you're never going to have enough resources. So, you know, we've tried to figure out how do we heal ourselves and do the mission that we've been given. So that's what I want to show to you today. And then also, because I love risk takers, we're going to take a little technology risk here. We've got 3 guardsmen out in Kosovo and in Bulgaria that we're going to try and connect in for just a couple of minutes so they can tell you what they're doing. Now, I do want to introduce Major General Ryan Gonzalez. Ryan, will you stand up? Ryan Gonzalez here in the very front row is the Commanding General of the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson, Colorado. I asked Ryan to come here because the Army has turned to the 4th Division to be the division aligned against Europe, along with 10th Special Forces Group. So Fort Carson is going to be focused on Europe. It'll take a little while to get the patch chart lined up, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew that they saw Ryan here. And then my own National Guard team, Colonel Chuck Crosby and Lieutenant Colonel Matt Angelucci right here. They are there in Wiesbaden with us. Neither one of them is very good looking, so they got to be good. So, and then of course I want to take any questions you might have. You're stuck with me all day long. I'm anxious to hear old General Ham, what he has to say later today. I think we're going to see several of the tags this afternoon, but I am staying all day long. It was important enough to me to want to do this. So I love Admiral Stavridis, you know, former SACUR. That was from him. This was after the Secretary announced that we're going to put European activity sets, equipment in Europe. You know, the last tank left about 2 years ago, so did the last box of tank parts and the last HET. Well, now it's coming back. So Army is putting an entire brigade combat team's worth of equipment on the ground in Europe. Most of it's there now, but it's going to eventually be stationed out in EAS, European activity sets, in company and battalion size configurations in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. And I think something to consider is that maybe National Guard equipment goes in there as well. If you've got it, if you've got howitzers you want to put there. Tennessee's done a great job, by the way, leaving engineer equipment in Bulgaria, so I'll address that as we go along as well. But even Admiral Stavridis said, a great sailor, there's nothing like having troops on the ground being there. That's what we do. And whether that's 30,000 that lives there or it's rotational. And by the way, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary Carter, said, I get it, Russia's #1 threat to our nation, but we're not going to add a single soldier. We can't. So you're going to have to do what they've done in CENTCOM for the last 14 years, is make use of rotational forces. So I'm going to talk to you about how you can help us do that. Okay, first slide. So what is the problem? I have to confess, even though I've served in Europe a few times, I did not realize, or else I had forgotten, that Kaliningrad is a piece of Russia. And it's right there, that little wedge in between Lithuania and Poland. There's 3 brigades of ground troops there. There's more air defense and electronic warfare capability and long-range missile capability there than you would find in any other European country. And that's just that one little piece there. And so what it does is, you can see from the rings, it will deny access up into the Baltic Sea. And then you go down to Crimea, with Russia's invasion and illegal annexation of Crimea, which you remember is still recognized as a part of the sovereign territory of Ukraine. The capabilities that they've put there, plus the Black Sea Fleet, when they put an Iskander missile into Crimea, they can actually touch about 94% of the Black Sea. So the 2 main avenues or axes for coming in to reinforce our allies on the eastern flank of NATO, the Russians have the ability to deny that through air defense, long-range missiles, and so on. So we're having to look for other places where we could do that if we had to. Obviously, Bremerhaven is important, but also seaports in Croatia and Slovenia at the north end of the Adriatic Sea, as well as other places in Western Europe. But you see that keeps moving it further and further west. So in order to give our political leaders the opportunity, some options, we've got to use speed. And my friend General Mick Nicholson, the commander of NATO's Land Command there, talks about speed matters. Now, speed in terms of freedom of movement, speed in terms of being able to assemble capability so that we can deter Russian aggression versus having to counterattack and retake captured NATO countries' territory, such as in
Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, obviously those three certainly see themselves as the most vulnerable. And the color there shows you in terms of how fast they can get there. Now, I went to Estonia a few months ago, and it was right after President Putin said, I can be in, no, it was Lithuania, he said, I can be in Vilnius in 4 hours. And I got asked about that, and I said, well, I made it from Wiesbaden in 3 hours. So I told them that we are there. We have American soldiers that are there. We have guardsmen that are rotating through there. We have Army reservists that are there, and we are committed to their defense. So that's what the assurance is all about. But you can understand why those nations that are that close feel that pressure. We did a terrain overflight with Lithuania the other day, and General Leka, he's pointing out, he said, this is where they normally attack. I mean, this is not their first rodeo. They have for centuries. And so they know all the traditional sites. And so we're working with them in a way that some of you older soldiers would remember from the days of GDP, where you had a battle book, you knew the route, you knew the name of the farmer, you knew how far it was out to a high tension wire. That's what we're doing now in these Baltic countries, and we're doing it in Georgia also, helping them develop their op plans, and so they know that we will be there. We're putting ammunition up there. We've got training ammunition, obviously, but we're also going to put operational force protection ammunition in each of those countries as well, so that if something happened while we have our soldiers there, which is 24/7 and almost all year long, you know, they've got the ability to defend themselves. Now, if you look at the little call-out box to the top right where it talks about the Suwalki Gap, this is an area that's about 100 kilometers long from the corner of Kaliningrad to the corner of Belarus. Now, this is not likely, but if you're trying to plan and envision a scenario and trying to explain why you need speed, a plausible scenario, and by the way, we've been surprised by every Russian snap exercise over the last year and a half, every single one. It's not because we're knuckleheads or we're not trying to pay attention. The fact is we don't have capacity and capabilities that we used to have to monitor and watch what they're doing. Correctly for the last 14 years, we've been building Dari, Pashto, and Arabic speakers. We've been focused on SIGINT, chasing down enemies of our country and killing lots of them, but we don't have the depth and the capabilities to watch the Russians the way that we used to. Russian speakers, Ukrainian speakers, and so on. And I know states out here have large populations of Russian and Ukrainian speakers, and we are turning to the Guard to ask for help. Because you can have satellites, but if you can't understand what's being said, the SIGINT really is not that helpful. It certainly won't be as responsive as it needs to be. And so that's one of my asks, frankly, is help us with Russian speakers and Ukrainian speakers from your states. But you can see a scenario where if they're able to do a snap exercise where 20, 30, 40,000 Russian troops show up in an exercise there in the corner of Belarus, and the 3 brigades that they have, 2 Army and 1 Naval Infantry Brigade in Kaliningrad, and they decide to close the Suwalki Gap, and then they deny access up into the Baltic Sea. And then the Russians, of course, this is going to be an environment where all communications are shut down, massive cyber effort, and it won't be obvious. I mean, frankly, it'd be easy if it was T-72 tanks or T-80s lined up. That'd be easy. The world's greatest Air Force would finish that for us in a short amount of time. But instead, it's going to be much more difficult. It's going to make it much more difficult for our political leadership to determine what's actually happening. And so that's the clock. When does the clock start on decision making? So in that sort of scenario, the Russians could be making a terrible miscalculation that maybe Portugal, maybe Italy, that they won't agree that this is, or it'll take a long time before that they agree that this is an Article 5 situation where then NATO gets involved. And so and of course the way the Russians talk about use of nuclear weapons, they've identified Romania, Denmark, and Sweden as nuclear targets. That's incredible. But they talk about it so much. So you can start seeing a scenario then where snap exercise, close the Suwalki Gap, isolate the 3 Baltic countries, and splash a nuke out in the Baltic Sea just to show that what they actually do have the capability. And then they say, you know, is the West really going to respond? U.S. will respond, obviously. We got American soldiers. Some of your soldiers are going to be inside those countries if and when that ever does happen. But in terms of our capability, so obviously we don't want it to ever get to that situation, and that's where speed comes in. Our ability to assemble, to demonstrate capability, and you know, deterrence is all about having the capability and then demonstrating the ability to use it. That's where you come in. All right, next slide. So, when I was a lieutenant, about 100 years ago, there were 300,000 troops in Europe, mostly in West Germany. We had some in Italy, we had some in Turkey, of course. We had gigantic Air Force, a huge Navy. Today, from an Army perspective, we had 30,000 regular Army soldiers that are stationed, forward stationed in Europe, mostly in West Germany, but also in Italy with the Airborne Brigade. We still have the same mission, though: assure our allies and to deter Russia from aggression. So my mission is to take our 30,000 and make it look and feel like 300,000. Now, the way we're going to do that is with these 5 pillars here, and if you will bear with me, I want to step through them. First pillar, obviously, empowering junior leaders. It is not uncommon. You go into one of these countries in Eastern Europe in the Atlantic Resolve box, and the senior U.S. Army commander is a captain. And so the Prime Minister or the Minister of Defense knows the name of that captain by his first name. Or it may be good old Craig Johnson from the Tennessee Army National Guard, who was overseeing Resolute Castle, an engineering exercise where he had Alabama engineers in Romania and Tennessee engineers in Bulgaria, and Craig Johnson moving back and forth. He's the senior American in those 2 countries. This is the norm. Our aviators, you know, good old Fort Campbell, I spent 4 tours there. You had 2 aviation brigades. The standard for safety for flying at Fort Campbell was up here, for maintenance was up here. We got the exact same standard and expectations for safety and maintenance in Europe, except our one little aviation brigade is split between Estonia and Bulgaria. And so very often you've got a lieutenant or a captain, or CW2 is the senior officer aviator making sure we're flying safe. And by the way, they're not flying from Montgomery County into Davidson County. I mean, they're going from Bulgaria to Alabama to Hungary to Poland. It's tough, but we have no choice. So empowering junior leaders to do what we're having to do. Next pillar is National Guard and Army Reserve. We have zero bridges that can carry an M1A2 Sept tank. And some of you will remember, we used to have enough bridges you could go from France to England without ever getting wet. We have 0. We have no short-range air defense. 0. No, it goes from Patriot to M4. We have 3 engineer battalions. 1 belongs to the 2nd Regiment, 1 belongs to the 173rd, and then we got the great 15th Engineer Battalion. That's it. We have 0 HIMARS, 0 MLRS. We have 2 towed artillery battalions, 1 each with a regiment and with the 173rd. That's it. I don't have enough Russian or Ukrainian speakers to do what we need to do. Not for SIGINT, but also for training the Ukrainians that we're training. So I'm excited about California Army National Guard is already in Ukraine helping, and they're going to take on more and more responsibility with this joint multinational training group, Ukraine. You know, we're training MOI battalions right now. We just finished the 2nd of the 3 Ministry of Interior battalions. We start training 5 Ukrainian Army battalions in November. I can't sustain that. So I need a National Guard solution, and we've got a great National Guard colonel from California who has Ukrainian experience that is going to become the commander of the Joint Multinational Training Group Ukraine for those 5 battalions. And most of his staff is going to be California Army National Guard. And it's going to be paratroopers from 173rd, it's going to be soldiers from 4th Division, It's going to be Canadians and Lithuanians and probably 2 or 3 other countries that'll be helping to do that. You're talking about strategic effect. That's what California is going to help us provide, but there is plenty of work to be done. Now, you see that howitzer there. First time I pulled a lanyard in about 30 years, I was standing next to a PFC from Michigan. I went out there, they normally don't let me touch sophisticated equipment, and this was one of the brand new howitzers. He said, "Sir, would you like to pull a lanyard?" I said, "Well, hell yeah, of course." And it's a mixed crew. You got Latvian and Michiganders on the gun, and he's instructed me. He said, "You know, don't pull it with your arm. You got to hold it and turn your whole body." And he was exactly right. It worked like a charm. And they obviously were proud of that, what they were doing there, but also his confidence of telling the CG, don't use your damn arm, sir. You gotta use your whole body. So, of course, that guy was probably a bank president in his day job too. So he wasn't too impressed with the CG use. Looking at that Predator there, Texas National Guard, normally that thing would be employed watching Oklahoma University football practice. But that's flying out of Latvia. And this was another thing, I'm going to be candid with you, to see Greg Vednis, I didn't realize how much WASTA that guy had. He's got Texas flying for him out of Latvia. And then Greg leaves the Texas tag in Latvia with a Lufthansa strike. I don't know how you pulled that off, man. But a great example of cooperation. You better believe that our brand new ambassador in Latvia, Ambassador Pettit, she's going on and on about, oh man, we got these predators here and so on. And she didn't care. We got Texas Air National Guard Predator, or we got U.S. Air Force Predator. We got Predator. That's the effect. And so you are helping us help our ambassadors in ways that I would have never even calculated before. Next slide. Now, I think, I know Max is out there somewhere. Tennessee making the decision to leave its engineering equipment behind for next year's Resolute Castle. I can't thank you enough. I mean, not only is that a smart thing, because it's going to save us millions of dollars of shipping equipment back and forth, and I know things like engineer equipment are things that the governors are going to be very picky about. Do they have enough of that sort of equipment there? But the fact that Tennessee is able to do it makes so much sense, and it also represents a commitment. And then being able to see, Lynn Gable was there with me in Romania at Chinku watching the Alabama Guardsmen. Incredible work, having a huge impact on what we're trying to do using ERI money, European Reassurance Initiative money, and the ability of you guys to make that happen on pretty short notice, not in the normal cycle, was absolutely critical for us. But you can see there's other examples there. I have offered to General Cadavy the idea of, look, if you want to leave equipment over here, if it's Michigan howitzers, if it's engineer equipment, if it's bridging, if it's basic armored vehicles, any equipment that you want, I think, whether it's a mate site at JMRC, by the way, and I love this idea of maybe a couple of Guard brigade rotations going through Hohenfels for your CTC experience. It's about 8 million times better in my view than NTC or JRTC, because it's going to be multinational. You're going to be working with real allies where you'd have to fight. I think putting equipment there would be a great way to facilitate doing that. I know those are tough decisions every state will have to make. The door, in fact, I wouldn't say you're pushing against an open door. There's no door on the hinge, and there's no caveat. Whatever you want to do. Ohio National Guard, Debbie, I told you earlier, we had an air defense exercise called Tobruk Legacy in the Czech Republic. 4 other nations brought their short-range air defense systems for shooting down UASs. Ohio National Guard brought Sentinel. We have no Sentinel either, by the way. So the Ohio National Guard, on 3 months' notice, that changed my thinking, my understanding of capability. When I talked to those young men and women from Ohio, and I said, well, when did you guys find out you were coming here? And they said, 3 months ago. Wow, I did not know you could come that fast. So that was impressive. So I know you have a can't-fail mission in the National Capital Region, and I wouldn't ask you to take any risk on that, obviously. But if you've got Avengers, if you've got Sentinel that you want to put in Europe in one of our EAS locations, we can do that. AMC is going to does own the European Activity Set mission. That includes the maintenance, the security contract, all of that in each of these countries. Doesn't make any sense to have to set up a separate place for you unless it's for a mate site like at JMRC and Hohenfels. But these other locations, why in the world would we not want to tuck it in that AMC contracted maintenance facility that's going to be in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, and so on. So answer is yes to anything that I control that we can do. Okay, there's another pillar. It's our allies. That bridge you see right there in the middle is an incredible bridge. It's a German engineer battalion there at Minden. I watched them cross the Weser River in 30 minutes, snapping together a bridge, and then we moved a tank company across it. Then we shocked a Patriot battery, had them roll across it. It's an incredible bridge, and it has one British engineer company is organic to this or attached to this German engineer battalion. They have the same stuff. So you see Germans and British, you saw it in the video also. It's an incredible capability. So that's an example of where we're using other people's stuff to do what we have to do. Next week, on the 17th, 4th Squadron of 2nd Cavalry Regiment is going to be moving all the way from Vilsek, Rose Barracks, cross into, through the Czech Republic, and go into Hungary, where they'll link up with a Hungarian Army Brigade. At the same time, an airborne company from the 173rd is landing on the far shore or far bank of the Danube River. The Hungarians are building a bridge over the Danube, and that Stryker regiment or squadron is going to cross the Danube on a Hungarian bridge and then link up with another Hungarian unit on the other side and begin a 5-week training exercise. And then they're going to pass back out through Romania, crossing the Danube River on a Romanian bridge. So this is now what we're doing as routine because we have to practice this interoperability. And a lot of you guys have done river crossings at nighttime. You know there's signals where you marshal, there's a doctrine to it. You can't do that on a computer. You actually have to do it. You have to have drivers getting lost or falling asleep in the assembly area. You got to have, you know, putting the bridges together in bad weather. Not that I have ever been lost at night in any set of circumstances, but I have heard, or that I may have fallen asleep in my vehicle that I was TCing. So that's, you got to practice that. And so that's what we're working on. Helicopters. 12th Combat Aviation Brigade used to be the biggest aviation brigade in the Army. It now has one attack battalion in it, and that's up for review next year. So I'm looking for everything I can do to work with the Dutch and the British have Apaches. The Poles have incredible attack aviation. We put American soldiers on all sorts of other different aircraft. I suspect that some of you will have an interest or you see a training opportunity and a way to contribute with your aviation. And I'm not too fussed about what flavor, you know, where it is in terms of what level Apache you have or Black Hawk or whatever you have. I mean, we don't have enough Chinooks to move one infantry brigade right now. So we're open for business. Okay. Next slide. The regionally aligned force. This is, you know, the Army's answer to how do you deliver land capability to the combatant commanders. And we are very lucky to have the 4th Infantry Division designated as the division headquarters that's allocated against Europe. And it'll take about another year and a half for the patch chart to sort itself out. But eventually, the Aviation Brigade, the Stryker Brigade, the Light Brigade, the Heavy Brigade, the Sustainment Brigade. You know, now that I'm old, I care a lot more about logistics than when I was young. That shit used to just show up. Now it's like, actually, I have to be involved in it. But getting all them lined up behind our European challenge is brilliant, because now Fort Carson is going to be waking up every morning thinking about, you know, Russia, thinking about Europe, thinking about our allies in a way. And so I hope that each of you that are state partner, or maybe you've got you see opportunity for training and contributing, track down Ryan Gonzalez also and tell him, you know, he could, because that's who I depend on to run all the Atlantic Resolve exercises. 4th Division Mission Command Element, 90 people. They reach back. You know, this is not the old days where you had to get a division headquarters, you had to have 100 generators and acres of tents. It's 90 people with reach back into Fort Carson for analytical planning and so on. And then Ryan has done a fantastic job of rotating his officers and NCOs through there to give us that capability. He is the one who has provided mission command for everything that's happening from Estonia to Bulgaria, at division headquarters there. He needs some skills also. So if you're looking for people to get division level command and control experience working in a division headquarters, there's opportunity there. And then of course I mentioned aviation. Right now we've got an aviation battalion from Fort Stewart that we depend on, and there's another one coming in after that, and eventually they'll all be Iron Horse aviation, I believe, although aviation is stretched to the max. Special Forces 10th Group is lined up, and if you've got Special Forces that are looking for opportunities to train in Europe, 10th Group is a way to come into it as well. Okay, and then the last pillar of how do you make 30,000 look and feel like 300,000, I want the Russians over there going, God almighty, how many people do they have? They must have 300,000 people, because they see so many different patches showing up all the time. So we do engagements all over the place. We welcome when a congressional delegation comes over. We look for every opportunity to support DV days, exercises, and it's all about showing that American flag and different U.S. patches all over the place. So even though there might only be a company that participates in an exercise, you get the picture here of creating strategic effect to assure our allies and to deter Russia. So each of those markers there represents a battalion level exercise or larger. Every one of them was multinational. Every one of them had U.S. forces in it. Now, it may have been, in fact, I would say probably half of those, the U.S. participant was a Guard unit. You know, they're not asking, well, they actually are asking for a division in every country, but if you have a company or an aviation element or some capability that's in each of those countries, that gives them the assurance that we are committed. When you put an American soldier inside a country that's just a few kilometers from the Russian border, that's assurance. That's assurance. So you see there, that's what we have done and are doing this year. Next year's gonna be even bigger. Exercise Anaconda is something that I'd like for all of you to mark on your calendar. It's Poland's national exercise. It normally happens in September every other year. The Poles shifted it to June this year, the month before the Warsaw Summit, which they are hosting. And we're gonna have 12,000 to 15,000 American soldiers, both forward station, rotational, and the GRF from the 82nd is gonna come over and join an equal number of Poles in this exercise. It will be all over the country, and it's going to have a joint live fire aspect to it, maneuver, big time logistics. We're going to converge into Poland from the places we're deployed in order to practice that speed I talked about, so that our political leadership sees that they have capabilities that give them some options, and so that the Russians see that, yes, we can. That we could do that too. Okay, I think that was my last slide. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here, and we've got 3 short VTC links. The first one is Lieutenant Colonel John Kennedy from North Carolina. He's in K4. All right, John, let's see if this works. See how good your SIGO is.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Very good. All right, man, it works.
infrastructure and economy, extremist influence, organized crime, and the refugee crisis. The Army National Guard is the ideal sourcing component for the KFOR mission because we know defense support to civil authorities. KFOR is very similar to a DISCA mission conducted overseas rather than in our home states. As third responders behind law enforcement agencies from Kosovo and the European Union, we must always be prepared to act in case Kosovo's institutions become overwhelmed by civil unrest. We will bring many new skills and ideas back home with us. For example, our company-level units are receiving some of the best crowd riot control training from some of NATO's most experienced soldiers. For the Army and for USARA, this is an economy of force operation in a budget-constrained environment. KFOR is a model for how the Army and USARA can take advantage of the Army National Guard's strengths. This mission supports the sustainable readiness model for Army National Guard units in their available cycle. Here we are forging seamless partnerships on behalf of U.S. Army Europe, and we have 2 battalion-level command posts, one from Connecticut and the other from North Carolina. And in their formations, they include soldiers from Armenia, Austria, Germany, Hungary, Poland, Slovenia, and Turkey. For us, there is no point in labeling something a multinational operation because everything we do in Kosovo is inherently multinational. This deployment is also an opportunity to nurture state partnerships across Europe. For example, we were able to train during an exercise in Germany alongside Moldova, one of North Carolina's state partners. We are also supporting Iowa's state partnership with Kosovo and Ohio's with Serbia during our time here. Altogether, in the past 3 months, our soldiers have had the opportunity to train alongside and get to know soldiers from at least 16 partner nations. At this time, allow me to have Captain Elliott tell you a little bit about what he is doing here in Kosovo.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Captain Elliott from the 1st of the 150th Cavalry Regiment of the West Virginia National Guard, and I currently serve as the Executive Officer for the United States Liaison Monitoring Team here in Kosovo. As LMT, we operate under Joint Regional Detachment South, a Turkish command, with the commission of feeling the pulse of our locally assigned communities. This mission is tailor-suited to a National Guard unit because we function as a front line for building and maintaining relationships between local civil authorities and the Kosovo forces. Every town within Kosovo is assigned an LMT, and through our close relationships with these leaders, we are the first to identify and report changes in the local atmospherics. On a regular day, our soldiers will conduct key leader engagements with Kosovars, who range from the mayor's office on down to the local coffee shop owner and even rambunctious school children. As a junior leader, this opportunity has enabled me to learn how to successfully operate alongside our multinational partners here in KFOR. The U.S. is only one of several countries who are tasked with this mission. At JRD South, we are fortunate to operate alongside Polish, Turkish, Austrian, and Swiss soldiers alike. Our relationships with our partner nations has personally developed my relational and communication skills as we continue to ensure Kosovo remains a safe and secure environment with freedom of movement for its people. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. This concludes our brief. I'll be followed by our next briefer.
He looks like he's 14
Good morning,
years
sir.
old, man.
In August.
Hey, is that Todd Lawrence from Tennessee?
Yes, sir.
All right, Todd. Todd's there in Sofia, Bulgaria. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Major Todd Lawrence, Tennessee Army National Guard soldier, leveraged through the Tennessee State Partnership Program to U.S. Army Europe as a G3 Operations Liaison Officer supporting Atlantic Resolve South. I'm calling from the Office of Defense Cooperation at the U.S. Embassy in Sofia, Bulgaria, where I'm on mission to assist the Bulgarian country team, host nation military, on U.S. Army combined training exercises with Bulgarians and various other NATO allies. Key tasks include coordinating and assisting U.S. Army combined training exercises at Novoselo Training Area, Bulgaria. Synchronization and reporting through 4th ID Mission Command Element and various high-visibility strategic-level training exercises I've had the opportunity to work on include Steadfast Lev, Swift Response, NATO certification exercises, Kabili 15, to include Freedom Shoot, the first U.S. tanks to fire in Bulgaria, and Essen, a forthcoming NATO certification exercise beginning in October. Efforts concentrated to replicate or enable 30,000 soldiers to look and feel like 300,000 soldiers. Additionally, Resolute Castle 15, a Tennessee Army National Guard engineer range construction mission, is essential to developing quality operational training environment for U.S. Army, Bulgarian air and land forces, participating allies, and state-to-state partner training visitors to combine training exercises in Bulgaria. Sir, the road ahead involves essential coordination and communication to support the arrival of regionally aligned forces and European activity sets beginning this fall and continuing into 2016. Finally, sir, in Atlantic Resolve South, we as the U.S. Army are recognizing increasing opportunities to enhance the Bulgarian military's interoperability, adaptability, endurance, and overall depth as achievable goals through the Developing Countries Combined Exercise Program Initiative. Sir, this concludes our briefings. At this time, we're standing by for your questions.
Excellent. How about it? All three of those guys. So what you see there is we've got very young people with gigantic responsibilities, and they are each contributing in places that have strategic impact for the United States. Reliance on liaison officers or executive officers, multinational formations, and they didn't come in a box like that. I mean, this is years of building experience, of getting opportunities, and you know, when I walk into each to visit the Army chiefs of our allies, usually the first thing I see when I walk in the office is a plaque from their state partner state. When I walk into Al Lake's office, first thing I see is a great big Pennsylvania Army National Guard right in my face there. So I am a slow learner, but I picked up pretty quick that those Army chiefs, and when Nick Chuka from Romania talks about spending Thanksgiving on the lake with Perry Smith, you know, I've broken the code. You know, instead of fighting that, say, Perry, what else can you do? Like, invite me to go fishing with you. So, I guess really what I'm saying is that I need you. The Army needs you. There are no caveats. Obviously, figuring out how do you pay for everything, whether it's active guard or reserve, figuring out how to do that. But I am everywhere we can use ERI money, we're doing that. By the way, without ERI money, and I see Mr. Womack sitting there, sir, I'm sorry I didn't see it when I first walked up here, great congressman and guardsman himself from Arkansas. You know, without ERI, it was your dark brown hair that gave you away there. That's why I spotted it. Without ERI, there's none of this is happening. I mean, there's no rotational force, there's no equipment forward, there's nothing. There'll be 30,000 American soldiers guarding their concern and visiting Hohenfels, you know, once a year. With no ERI, there's none of that. No deterrence, no assurance. So let me conclude with a couple of thoughts. I think this afternoon we have an opportunity with any of the tags, frankly, that are interested in specific requirements or opportunities or requests or anything, suggestions you have for how we can make it easier for you to come be part of Strong Europe. I want to figure out how to do that, and I think y'all know how to help me do it. I would ask, I would love for you to come through Wiesbaden whenever you do go to visit your troops or work with your allies, your partners on the way in or on the way out, because you will know things that I won't know in 100 years about what the requirements are inside that state. So I would welcome that. You would be very welcome at Wiesbaden. Stay there at Old Clark House. My residence there is named after General Bruce Clark, hero of Battle of St. Vith in 1944, and then he was the USER Commanding General in 1960 to 62 during the Berlin crisis. I want you to stay there, see what we're doing, and then you can think about ways that you have that can help us be smarter about what we're doing. So that's a sincere invitation. I think 4 Texas National Guardsmen were wounded in the MFO mission. I was a cadet when that mission started. And probably just 2 or 3 years ago, most of us were thinking, why are we still there? But National Guard stayed there.
The Army depended on you to do that. And now you have 4 soldiers wounded, and the fact that General Milley, our chief, went straight to go find them, to check on them, to put a Purple Heart on all 4 of those soldiers. You know, he didn't say, hey, Tim Cadavy, do you want to come over and put a Purple Heart in these 4 guardsmen? It was General Milley, Chief of Staff of the Army, going straight to 4 soldiers to put a Purple Heart on those 4 soldiers. So I think I've used up most of the oxygen in the room. I'll stick around here during the break, and I am here all day. If I can take questions now, Deb, or we can leave. I'll do however you want to do this.
Okay. If there's a question out there, does anybody have a question for General Hodges?
General Hodges, good morning. Perry Smith from Alabama.
Is this my invitation? I hope, man.
Sir, you know the invitation is always open. Anytime you need, I'll call in sick and we'll go fishing. Sir, thank you for being here. I know your schedule is jam-packed, and we really appreciate you being here. And thank you for your support of the National Guard. You know, you hit so many good things today. We need you, and you need us. And the training that we get, the 21 states and the 22 countries over there, we get it. We're doing a heck of a job. It represents a hell of an opportunity for us to do realistic, good, professional training with these other countries, and it's just a great deal. You know, probably not many people in this room remember the old Western TV program Paladin. Is this hired gun that, and he had this card that he gave out. He was a professional hired gun, and his motto was "Have gun, will travel," and that's basically what the National Guard represents. We don't have any money, and my question to you is, can you think of anything we can do to help you acquire the money that you need to get us over there more often? Because we're looking for additional opportunities, but our limitation is the money. Can you think of anything we can do to help you grease the skids to get us some more money to make these great opportunities come to life?
Great. Perry, thanks for that. There's 3 or 4 things. One, obviously continuing to push for ERI, and I think that's a way that we're going to be able to do that in the near term. I saw a slide the other day that indicated that state partnership program funding might be starting to dip. Obviously, I'm 1,000,000,000% opposed to that. So continuing to help educate decision makers on the value of the state partnership program. Now, I will tell you this, in speaking in all candor, not everybody on the Hill believes in the strategic effect of the state partnership program. I think there's very few of them left, but I talked to a SASC staffer the other day, and he was remembering back maybe how it was 12, 13, 14 years ago, where it didn't have quite the operational effect that it does now. So I think all of us still have some education work to do on the Hill with staffers to make sure that they understand, you know, that this is not a European tour opportunity, or that it's something beyond, or where tax money is being diverted for things that are not necessarily related to achieving that defense effect. Now, I personally believe it is okay. In fact, I would encourage that if Texas and Nebraska with Czech, or Illinois with Poland, if that grew into university connections and stuff like that. But I think that we got a little work to do to make sure that we can protect the state partnership program. And then the third thing I think that will help us significantly is getting Atlantic Resolve designated as a named operation, OAR. I think if you have it, Operation Atlantic Resolve, it moves up in how the Joint Staff and OSD fund things, and then I think that also would release some capabilities for us to be able to turn to the Guard for those capabilities like bridging, like aviation, like air defense, that is a little bit more difficult to get. And frankly, right now, I think my mind wire obstacle to getting the named operation is somewhere in the Joint Staff. So I am hoping that we can get some help to pressure on the Joint Staff. Now, obviously, they're not bad guys or dumb guys. I mean, they're looking, they've got X amount of dollars too, and there's other requirements out there. But if the chairman, the vice chairman, and the Army chief all say it's the #1 threat, the Secretary of Defense says Russia's #1 threat, but we got 2% of the budget in Europe and only 5% of the Army structure, that's a disconnect. So getting it named as getting OAR as a no-kidding, formally named operation would help. Finally, for your own planning, we do something called the CTC, the Combined Training Conference. We do it twice a year at Oberammergau, and the next one is, I think, 16 to 20 November. We push the planning horizon out 3 years for exercises. So we had 37 different countries show up there. This is what the U.S. Army does. You know, we provide a gravitational pull on everybody else. The Army, we don't have to do it all, but if we do it, other people will come join and be a part of it. So this has turned into a great place to find exercises where you can match your requirements and opportunities against what's out there all over Europe. So I would encourage you to make sure that you send somebody from the state. This is not limited to state partners or anybody else. Send somebody to that CTC at Oberammergau and find the training opportunities for different capabilities that you might have.
Okay. Hey, sir. Corey Carr, Indiana.
All right, one more, Corey. You're taking their break time, so.
All right, I'll hurry. Hey, sir, our state partner activities, we want to focus those on your theater security cooperation objectives, but there's a perception in the Pentagon that Army commands don't know what state partners are doing. What can we do to make sure that we're synchronized well with your team to achieve those objectives?
Right, thanks, Corey. Well, first of all, I want to make sure that your states know what you're doing. So after the Alabama Guardsmen left, I called the Montgomery newspaper and did a telephone interview with them to brag on what these guardsmen had been doing there. And I'm trying to do that in each state, actually, to reach back. Because I know, I learned this from watching Secretary Guerin when he was Secretary of the Army. You know, he was a former congressman from Fort Worth, Texas. And the first thing he did in the morning was not read the Washington Post. He read the Dallas-Fort Worth newspaper. So I'm thinking, indirectly to make sure that the Congress is aware of what's going on is by reaching out to and I hope you don't mind I do that, but reach back to the media that supports your communities to make sure that they know that how much I appreciate and how much I value what's being done. We are also working hard inside U.S. Army Europe to get a little bit quicker on advertising what's going on. If you check the U.S. Army Europe, the Strong Europe webpage, almost every single day, one of the 6 articles that moves through there, and I'm on them all the time, to keep it fresh, there is a Guard unit that's a part of it. Now, that doesn't reach every corner of America, so I'm looking for every opportunity as well in the Joint Staff, in OSD, to talk about how much I depend on what you bring to it. So you've got an advocate in me, but I think looking for opportunities to highlight that on the Hill will be critical as well. Thanks very much, guys.